I work from home. I run my own team of me. I don't think there are any other people with this specific job title, inclusive and accessible communication educator. I think everyone has access needs. I still don't understand my taxes. I felt like not very feminist to say that I struggle with numbers. I now just basically say that's for my accountant to think about. I thought I had to clock in and do 8 hours, but they might have been 8 really bad hours of work. I'm not trying to ruin anyone's day, but I've had to give up that wish to be sort of like everybody's cup of tea, and it's been really liberating.
Hello and welcome to Coffee and Oysters, the London Business Babe podcast, where we get you together with business tips that actually work and letting you know where it's worth tapping your oyster. My name is Frances. I am your host and a certified Notion consultant and founder of the Notion Bar, where I get my clients together by building them personalized productivity systems in Notion. For my system-loving girlies, no need to struggle with Notion alone. I host a monthly Big Notion Energy Academy session where we can unpack Notion's latest releases and answer your burning questions. Details in the show notes as always. This week, I am currently client maxing. So if you are a freelancer or a business owner, this might sound familiar to you. I'm going to be away in New York for basically half a month at the beginning of April, and I recognize I could work while I'm away, but I just don't want to. I am just trying to take on as much work as possible to compensate for that time. I'm in the process of hiring an assistant for the podcast, which is super exciting. How I'm trading that off financially is that I'm going to cancel my co-working membership because I rarely leave the house now. I'm going to use that money to hire an assistant and get day passes when I want to go in, and it'll work out cheaper. Thank you everyone who's been supporting the podcast. The response has been incredible. I do want this to be more of a communal thing. So if you want to get shouted out on the show, sign up to the Substack. And every other week, you'll get a Manifest Mondays email where I need you to shout out your wildest dreams. Before today's incredible episode, some housekeeping. The show notes should be your best friend. This is where you can sign up to be a guest, find all the recommendations and the Coffee and Oysters guide. Please don't let me scream into a void. I'd love to get as much feedback from you as possible, whether you're listening on Substack, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, you name it. Keep those comments, likes, and 5-star ratings coming. Now grab a cup of coffee, get comfy, and dive into today's episode. Hello, everyone. Super excited. Today, we are being joined by Ettie Bailey-King, who is an award-winning inclusive and accessible communication educator. She teaches people how to be more inclusive and to communicate in a way that likes better for autistic, ADHD, tired, and distracted people. So all of us. And her clients in the past have included Vodafone, ON, Global Witness, Harrods, Savills, and Decathlon. Welcome to the show, Ettie. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Amazing. How is the week going for you?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. Took me quite a long time to figure out what day it was. It's one of those classic weeks where every day just keeps on coming. And every day I think, big busy day, maybe tomorrow will be more chill, maybe next week will be more chill. But I have learned in my years of freelancing or running my own business that that day never comes. You have to grab your little moments of pause when you can get them.
Literally. How long have you been a freelancer slash business owner?
So I went freelance in 2019 at the end of that year. So I'll be coming into my sixth year of freelancing or running my own business. I'm never sure which one I identify with. Sometimes I think of myself as a business owner. Other times I think of myself as a freelancer or a not a word I've ever used, but I will now, solopreneur.
Yeah, I know it's so weird. I feel like it's kind of hard to find events to go to because you'll be like, oh, this is the founder event. And you go, and everyone there runs a tech startup. And you're like, I don't think this is for me. But I do own a business. I'm just a service provider.
Totally. I've had that exact moment of someone being like, so I just IPO'd my something and we made 7 figures. And I'm like, I work from home. I run my own team of me. It's me.
Yeah.
It's fun. It can be quite alienating. But I also think what's really nice about that is that you can flex it. Often, if I'm around small agency owners, I find that can be quite a similar life actually to the life of like a solo freelancer who maybe works with a bunch of consultants. You're similarly involved in other people's work without being anyone's like employer. But yeah, it could be strange.
Tell us about your business. How do you provide value for the world?
So I'll say a bit about my job title because it's a bit of a weird one. I don't think there are any other people with this specific job title, inclusive and accessible communication educator. It's a bit of a strange one. I kind of made it up. And I'll talk about what the two elements of it are. So the inclusive age, class, gender, disability, race, sexual orientation, nationality, the way that we talk about things like this actually shapes the actions that we take. So if I talk about disability using very stigmatizing, shaming, kind of deficit language and talk about disability as a lack, that then shapes the opportunities that disabled people get given. It shapes the way that we are treated in the world. By contrast, if I use like an assets based framing and just talk really accurately and factually and use the terms that disabled people like to use about ourselves, the evidence is that we get treated more seriously and we get offered like more opportunities. And so that kind of applies to all these other areas around how we talk accurately about racism in a way that can make people see that it's created and it can be dismantled. It's created, it can be dismantled. So it's all about applying that thinking to the very words that we choose. Inclusive communication might be getting someone's pronouns right, pronouncing people's names correctly, knowing how to talk about workplace discrimination or DEI targets in a way that's really accurate. And then there's the accessibility side. There's loads of really technical definitions of what accessibility is. And one of them is that it is when a product or service can be used by disabled people as actively as when non-disabled people use it. Even that definition, I don't love because for me, it's even more basic than that. I think accessibility is when people get what they need. I think everyone has access needs. So disabled people, neurodivergent people, tired, distracted, that's everybody. We all have some degree of access needs. And accessible communication is learning how to express yourself, speak, write, and send messages in a way that's going to work better for everyone. Keeping it short, simple, saying what you mean, getting straight to the point, and being concrete. And yeah, everybody benefits. Oh, and then the final word, educator. So I chose that word because I was calling myself a consultant. And like we were talking about earlier with like freelancer, business owner, what expectations does that give you of the person you're working with?
Yeah.
What if you wanted the expectations to be like, this is someone who's going to be on your side, help you grow and learn. I'm not going to shame or blame you. We're just sharing knowledge and learning together. I chose educator because it has that warm in it together feeling. Whereas consultant, in my experience, can be a little bit like someone comes in and like wags their finger at you and then charges you loads of money to like not tell you how to fix your problems. I didn't want to bring in those associations.
Yeah. I've been playing around with how I reframe my title. So my official title would be certified Asian consultant. But I realize that that's like SEO friendly. That's what people type in. But yeah, it's so true. Like there is a bit of stigma against consultants, and eventually I will kind of make that a way that frames it so that people understand more about the partnership side of things, like you said. Then I think an educator in your instance is that because that is what you do, and I think people automatically have a respect for educators because they think of like teachers, and so yeah, I think that works. Cool. How did you start your business? Let's go there. Let's start at the beginning.
All
So
right. So
it's 2019 or maybe it's 2018 and you're like, "Ooh."
I probably started with my first ever experiences of paid work where I was looking around me and I was like, is this it? Is this really what I'm expected to do? I felt
Whoa.
so frustrated with pretty much every workplace I've ever been in. And I've had a very varied work history. Um, some of that is because I just like, I couldn't stick around in certain jobs. They weren't accessible for me. They didn't work with the way that my brain works. Other times I would think, oh, I can do this job, but I'm getting really irritated or annoyed, or I feel like I'm doing harm. And that was really what pushed me in about 2019 to finally leave my employed job, because I used to work in international development charities doing digital comms and content jobs. The way the international development world is set up is, in my opinion, structurally racist. You have people based in places like London, Geneva, and DC, sometimes getting paid quite a lot of money, not always. Lots of people are also really underpaid, getting paid to tell other people's stories and not always do it in a partnered, collaborative, respectful, or dignified way. Again, there are amazing people doing brilliant work in that sector, but I wasn't always in those types of spaces. I felt like my job was to tell these reductive stories that were kind of white saviory, which would massively simplify the problems of why international development exists, really kind of like making it seem like some countries just happen to be poor, which actually, if you know the history of colonialism and the way Western countries have been involved, is not it. That's not the full story. I felt like my job was telling this really simple part of the picture, and there was no room for me to tell that bigger story. And I just kept thinking, why am I in this role when there's so many other people that could do this job more effectively? I remember getting offered this opportunity where a major nonprofit was going to fly me to India to do some digital content. And I was like, India has literally millions of people who could do this job better than me, but it's being offered to me. So it basically was not a values fit for me anymore in terms of the projects that I was getting. So I left my job and I wrote down on a sheet of paper, I still remember it. I wrote down on the left hand side of the paper all the things that I wasn't happy with, all those superficial stories, all that kind of two-dimensional, unsatisfactory work where I was like, oh, what is the point of this? And then I just tried to look at the other side of the page and imagine, what do I want instead? And that's how I came to try and do inclusive and accessible comms, because I was trying to contrast all the things that I wasn't happy with and find their opposite. And I will say it was not an overnight success. I didn't like instantly wake up and figure it out. But now, almost 6 years on, I feel like I have found that counterpart to doing comms in a way that doesn't feel harmful anymore. It feels really hopeful and really positive.
Okay. And so, had you had any experience of entrepreneurship before you set out, or were you kind of like going into it almost like a duckling, just trying to find your feet and figure it out as you went along? How was that transition into the logistic side of running your own business? I think I went to a talk where 10% of what you do is really above the surface, and that's what people see. But the 90% is the logistics and the admin and stuff. How did you find your feet with that?
Someone had shown me an accurate picture, like, oh, you want to work for yourself? This is what it looks like. I would never have done it. But luckily, I didn't know how difficult it was going to be. I had no idea of that whole 90%. I didn't know that there would be heaps of admin, financial management, that I would have to try and vaguely understand my taxes. I still don't understand my taxes. I didn't know that most of the job is marketing when you're
Yeah.
trying to build up your profile. And so it was really, really rough. It was a very hard transition. I don't want to pretend I've got it all smoothed out and perfect now. I know we're going to chat later about things you would do differently. I have a big list to get through, but I'm really grateful that I learned it. The only way you learn stuff in life is through getting it wrong, right? You never have a really easeful, relaxing experience and then say, wow, I learned so much about myself, because you're not usually learning when you're comfortable. So I guess the answer to how that transition was is that it was pretty disastrous and pretty chaotic. And that's how I got myself to a place where I can now have a relatively smooth functioning business that almost looks after itself, because I figured out what I'm not good at and how I can outsource that. I'm sticking to the area where my skills are best deployed. So, yeah, focusing on what I can actually do and do well.
What are some of those things that you've just chosen to outsource that you're like, you know what, I am not good at this, someone else can do that?
Okay, all things to do. I feel so defeatist saying that. And I wanted for so many years to be like, oh, I'm going to resist this stereotype. It felt like not very feminist to say that I struggle with numbers and I don't have a natural head for them. So I would try and kind of be like, yeah, I've got my head all over this side of things. Didn't. And it didn't matter how much time I put into trying to keep on top of what was happening on the financial side, other than having my very basic understanding of what's coming into the business and going out of the business. I now just basically say that's for my accountant to think about. I'm really lucky to have an accountant who can stay on top of that. I've also got an operations consultant who's amazing. She helps me with operations and customer success. So that's like going through client feedback, which I just don't have the stamina and attention for. I recently started working with a comms and marketing person who is a legend. I'll talk more about her later because I was pouring so much of my time into creating content. And I still do, but it was taking up almost a full-time job. Even though creating comms and content comes naturally to me and I really enjoy it, that was an example of something I am good at, but isn't the best use of my time because I want to be out delivering. I want to be designing workshops, auditing
Mm.
clients, meeting with prospective clients, teaching my course. I want to be coaching people and getting information out there. And spending all my time on LinkedIn isn't really doing that.
Okay, fair enough. And so is it almost like I'm actually quite curious to dig more into that relationship with your marketing communications consultant. So is it almost like a case of your ideate ideas together and then they'll like deliver them? Or like how does that relationship work? Like do
Yeah.
they reply to things for you? Yes.
So I'm going to shout her out. She's called Ellie Perkins. She runs Right and Sunny, and she is such a gifted, brilliant natural communicator. She's amazing. The way it works is I send her an otter recording, a voice recording that also has a transcript, and I'll talk through like blog post idea. I want to talk about this, this, and this. Can you link in this? Here's an example. If I have questions, I might be like, hey, do you think we should frame it this way or should we talk about that? Then she will put together what I've expressed, but beautifully and picking out the bits that are important. So I'll kind of almost like spew raw ideas at her and she'll select the strongest bits and write it up really nicely. And she's got this amazing sense for what my tone of voice is, which I think has come from working together thoughtfully. She's like absorbed the type of content that I create so that when she writes, it's not her interpretation of what I'm saying. I think it's really rooted in like all my values. And it helps that I've been putting out content for years. She's like, oh, I know that you approach things in this way. But it feels like a really amazing partnership and collaboration. It doesn't feel like I'm just putting stuff out there in a one-sided way. It really feels very mutual to me.
Amazing. That sounds like everyone needs an Ellie. And what a team, Ettie and Ellie. Like double E squared. Incredible. So over your journey, it seems like there has been a lot of trial and error, trying different things, seeing what works. Has there ever been a point, especially in the early stages, where you just needed to pivot the business model for what you do?
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I would say that I'm maybe always pivoting because in terms of what I do, that's never changed. Inclusive language, accessible communication. But over the years, I've added in and taken stuff out. A year ago, I started offering my group course, which is called Bold Type. It's a 12-week group course on inclusive language and accessibility. And that was quite a new offer. And I didn't know if that would be maybe too almost like too intense and all because it is very intense on my side. I'm teaching people live for 2 hours a week, and then we've got this Slack community, and I'm jumping in all the time, answering people's questions. People have access to me on email, and that felt like quite a big pivot from the life of the consultant who is reachable by their client, but maybe in more kind of like defined and restricted ways. So that felt like a pivot. Then offering coaching. So I do one-to-one and group coaching for clients where they want to learn more about inclusive language and accessibility, but in quite specific ways. So they might be like, I want to do a whole section on autism friendly communication. And then I want to do a whole week on ADHD friendly communication. And I want you to help me work through my ideas and my challenges. And they might bring along pieces of work like, here's a job description we're about to put out. What changes would you make? And to be honest, a lot of that isn't coaching. That's actually different methodologies. That's kind of like mentoring and consultancy all mixed into one. That can be quite a different style of working. And I feel like I've mixed together so many different styles of delivery. Like auditing someone's website and social media feels very different to then giving a keynote at a conference. So whilst I haven't pivoted the content, it's always been this kind of testing out new modes, testing out new ways of delivery, experimenting, seeing how that goes. There's been times when I've done too much of some and had to pull it back because I really need a mix of different delivery styles. I burn out, but I get energy. I guess it's like that saying, like a change is as good as a rest. Only rest is as good as rest. We need rest, but I need a ton of variety. Otherwise, I'm going to get bored. It's been about injecting controlled variety.
Amazing. And so, in terms of, because you've got different offerings, what are some effective methods of getting clients for your different types of offerings? Because maybe a different type of person would be attracted to the group coaching versus your more tailored solutions. So, how do you get people for your offers?
Yeah, I'm actually still not completely clear on how I get people or how people find me. I know the answer is they find me through my content, and I still get inquiries from people who read something like a blog post that I wrote like 5 or 6 years ago, or are like responding to something in a newsletter from literally years ago. So for me, putting out content has been the best, but admittedly slow burn investment in bringing clients to me. And I've played the long game to such a degree that I think I probably went too far over the years. And I've maybe been giving away, some people would say, too much knowledge and information. But because I work in inclusion and accessibility, it's so important to me that I don't gatekeep knowledge. It has meant that I've probably maybe done myself out of a bit of work over the years because of making so many resources freely available. In terms of how those clients come to me, I feel like Sometimes it's sometimes it's direct recommendations. So like a former client recommending me, maybe they leave and go to another organization and then they're like, "Oh, we had a training workshop from Ettie. Let's bring her into my new team." Sometimes it will be that I've done a bit of learning or thinking out loud in my content on social media in particular. I try and think out loud and show my work in process. What's an example? Literally this week, I've been chatting about how I'm on a mission to rid the world of PDFs because they have so many accessibility problems. Uh,
Ah,
Often not screen reader friendly, so they can be really disabling for blind and vision impaired people. Even a so called accessible PDF, when people say that, they mean that it's well tagged, but there's a limit to how well you can tag it. And there's still all these other problems around how you resize it and then how you find it and use it. We need to get rid of them. They're just the worst. And there's so many better alternatives, like just make a standard web page or use a Google Doc, standard document format, something that can be opened in Microsoft Word and in like a bunch of different. My mission to destroy the PDF. I was talking out loud on social about that. My client wants to have a download on their website. We know it can't be a PDF, could be there, but how do we manage the issue, which is that they want some bits to be uneditable and some bits to be editable? I don't know that answer. And by putting that out in the world, I'm always amazed by how much people are willing to help. So I do a lot of trying to ask for help, and I do a ton of offering help. So whenever people get in touch and need support, connections, recommendations, I do my very, very best to help them. And in a weird way, I think that's been my most effective networking. So just thinking out loud and showing people what I do,
I
and
love that.
then asking for help and offering help.
That's so cool. I'm also quite fascinated to go down this PDF rabbit hole, actually, because it's something that I hadn't thought of before. And that's kind of at the crux of what you do. If it hasn't directly affected you, you might not consider it. But now you've made me aware of that. I'm like, oh, I actually really want to learn more about this thing. So that's amazing, to be honest. And yeah,
Yes, I've
sure.
converted someone. It's great.
I love that. And so, if you could start again or tell someone who's trying to do a similar thing, what is the one thing you would say to avoid doing? Just save everybody some time and stress
Um, can I cheat and can I have
for it.
have so many things. If I could start again, I would avoid trying to be the person that does everything. I would really want to get to know what my unique skills are, not admin, but anything to do with creative expression, the sort of the deep technical knowledge. And I think where my strengths lie is making potentially complicated technical stuff feel simple, clear, and accessible. But my strengths are never going to lie on the finance side. And I've just like finally made my peace with that. I spent a lot of time in the early years thinking of myself as an employee. I thought I had to clock in and do 8 hours, but they might have been 8 really bad hours of work. Then I would end up working 14 or 16 hours, and those were even less effective. I was working still thinking I was someone's employee, not realizing that I own my time and can choose what I do and when I do it. The big lesson was learning about energy management and realizing there were times when I was pushing through unproductive afternoon slump where you're at the desk, but you're not really at the desk. I would try and avoid that kind of presenteeism with myself and get more into a mindset of really honest, truthful reflection. Is this work going to move my business forward, or am I just pretending to do stuff right now? If you're just pretending, put your out of office on and get away from that desk. Actually, I say that I don't really need to do that because I don't get that many emails, but like, do whatever you need to get a change of place, take some movement if that's available to you, refresh yourself because there isn't a boss watching you. I would also try and avoid that mindset of thinking you have to figure stuff out before you start. Everything I've learned or figured out has been through getting stuff wrong. And I find that you find out by doing, test and learn for it. So I was able to do that with my first group program. I sold the places on it as I was building it. And then when it came to like 2 months later, when the course actually begun, I had payments in the bank and I was delivering it and I was getting paid to test that out. Now I gave people discounts because it was the first ever cohort. I was really transparent about it being like the working, like kind of the beta version. And everyone who did that first cohort got free access to the next one when I'd use their feedback to improve it. And there were tons more resources. But sell first and then build it and get paid so that you're not spending your own time and your own money on things if you possibly can. I would also say for me, it's been about unlearning professionalism, this very narrow idea of professionalism, which is that I thought that I had to be careful with my work to be palatable and not too political. But my work is inherently so political. Whether you choose to make your website accessible to deaf people or blind people, or whether you choose to talk accurately about racism, that is deeply political. I've had to learn that I'm not for everybody, and some people don't want to be challenged on that. When I challenge people, I do try and do it kindly and compassionately. I'm not trying to ruin anyone's day, but I've had to give up that wish to be liked and that wish to be sort of like everybody's cup of tea. And it's been really liberating. And it's also been so much more. Feel like this is the period in my business where I'm finally flourishing and there's finally steady, good income in. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's come at the same time as giving up trying to be everybody's favorite don't rock the boat kind of consultant. That's not me. I am challenging. And if people want it, they want it. And if they don't, fine, they can work with someone else.
Honestly, when you're in that state, it's energetically so much easier. And you don't feel like you're masking and trying to be this other thing, which is so energy draining at the end of the day, which can also lead to burnout. And also, this way, you're only working with people who have the same vision as you. It just makes it a better time for everybody. It's
Totally.
amazing. And then, last question before we skip on to the next section. What did you want to be when you grew up as a child? Because I
I
always feel like sometimes that leads into what we do now, but it's also just interesting to see the progression.
Totally. I always wanted to be a writer. I wanted to have written, and this is a struggle that I've had all through my life as I try and balance creative writing with doing my work. I really want to have written something wonderful, but I struggle so much with that focused, difficult practice at the computer, getting the writing done. So I knew I wanted to work with absolutely obsessed with storytelling. Um, Over time, I had to make my peace with the fact that, like, the life of list probably not for me. Like, hats off to the amazing dedication, I would say, tolerance for loneliness and isolation that you sometimes have to be a successful writer. I do think of myself as a writer in that I'm writing every day. I write my newsletters. Some of them I co-write with the amazing Ellie, but I still write a load of my own content. I get to bring in a creative side to the way that I see issues. I try and do a lot of storytelling using analogies and metaphors to explain why inclusive language matters and how it affects us. In a meta way, inclusive language is all about storytelling because it's the the human brain is a storytelling machine. It's not designed to remember facts or figures. If I tell you a bunch of stats right now about the prevalence of neurodivergence, you're quite unlikely to remember the exact numbers. But if I tell you my personal story, you're very likely to remember the beats of that story because that's how we evolved, sharing information. Early humans would have told each other cautionary tales around the fire at night. I still see myself as getting to be a writer in a way, even if I don't currently have my name on the side of a novel, and I may never do, but I get to work with words, and that feels really good.
Amazing. You know what? Maybe one day you'll use your strengths. And if you didn't want to do the whole book yourself, you could work with an Ellie or a publishing house to help you co-write your novel. That sounds like it's something that would benefit everyone. You have so many ideas, and books are a great way to get that across for some people. So yeah, make never say never, I guess.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so now we're going to transition into some things that spark joy in your life, essentially. I like to start this section off with music. I am currently creating a Spotify playlist with all of these songs on. But do you have a walk up song or the song that just gets you hyped?
Yeah, I literally have a Spotify playlist called Hype Songs, which I find so embarrassing to share. But let's be honest, I really need music to help me change my mindset and go from that deflated version of me that often starts the day thinking, how am I going to get through the 300 things on my to do list? Putting on a hype song definitely helps. One of my favorites is Squabble Up by Kendrick Lamar. It just lifts my mood and my energy and gets me singing along and feeling like I can do anything.
I love that. Have you seen the TikTok that I saw recently of these Bollywood dancers doing a routine to it? It's so good.
I will check that out. I love the sound of that.
And then, do you have any personal policies that just keep you like centered, basically? So I always use mine as an example. Like, I don't take calls before 10 a.m. I might be physically awake, but my brain isn't quite there yet.
Yeah, so wise. I just started doing that same thing, no calls before 10, and it has been game changing. Um, I would always say, "Oh, no, I'm not a particularly visual thinker." And then I would realize that the only times I ever remembered anything was if I had a physical Post-it on my laptop saying, "Remember, noise canceling headphones work," or like, "Open up." I have this flow in the morning where I'll open up some tools that I use, like Llama Life, which is this really cute productivity tool for ADHD. So I have visual reminders of whatever I'm trying to do. I try and talk myself through processes. When I'm looking at my to do list, I ask, does this need to be done? Does it need to be done now? And does it need to be done by me? And I'm getting a little bit better at figuring out what might be saved for later, what might be delegatable, and what just like maybe I do not touch. So that's been really helpful. And having an end of day ritual. So I'm not brilliant at always doing this, but when I do it, I feel the difference. I say out loud, that's it. My work is finished for the day. Nobody needs anything more from me. And then I actually shut down my computer. Otherwise, I find like I leave my computer running, I leave my brain running, and it's kind of like ticking over with active tasks all night. And then I'm flipping open my laptop when I'm meant to be like relaxing and having my evening.
Oh, I love that. It's almost like a mantra, basically. It's like, done now. And probably something neurosciencey in that where the brain, like, that triggers something and you're officially put into rest mode. That's so cool. I love that most.
Yeah. Oh, and actually that reminds me, I do try and use little mini affirmations. I use them as my password. So if there's something you're trying to remind yourself to do, like take a deep breath a few times and have a mindful moment or be brave, take risks or be experimental. I would experiment with making that your laptop password or making it like if you have folders on your I have like affirmations as the label of the folders. So my money one is I am wealthy. I tried having I am a numbers person and I was like, "Nope, that doesn't feel right."
That's, I actually do. have that as my business password.
That's so
Like,
great.
every time I type in, I'm like, yeah, I
Yes.
love that.
Words are so powerful. They are scaffolding for how we see the world, how we let ourselves behave, and the things we seek out. Big believer of that.
Literally, one of my favorite reframing things at the moment is, oh, I have to do this thing. I'm like, I get to do this thing. And that really kind of shakes me up a bit. And I'm like, okay, let's go. Because sometimes you ask for something, and then when you get it, you only focus on the hardness of it. This is what you wanted, basically.
The number of times I've been dreaming of working with a client and thinking, "Oh, I really hope I get this project. How incredible would it be to work with, like, Copperfield, for example, breast cancer
Mm.
charity. Love them. I'm doing some work with them now. I absolutely love them." But I find myself being like, "Oh, no, woe is me. I have to do my work." Instead of being like, "I'm getting to do an accessibility review of this amazing charity that I respect and admire, and I get to be like a tiny part in their work. What a privilege." So yeah, the hard stuff is definitely still hard, but yeah, trying to find those little mini reframes.
Yeah, love that. And so I'm always interested in style, as I feel like I personally have a uniform for myself. Are there any pieces in your wardrobe that you gravitate towards that you're just like, this is what I wear for X or brands? Just quite curious. People out there.
Yeah, big fan of having a uniform or something resembling it. It's just one less thing to think about. I really value having less friction in my life. So anything I can do to take away moments of decision, I will do it. I'm pretty much always wearing dungarees, Lucy and Yak for life. I actually can't even count how many pairs I have. Uh, Too many, but they're so colorful, they're so cozy. You just feel incredibly relaxed because you're basically wearing a baby's romper suit, but I feel like they look very expressive because the patterns are so fun and individuals. You get to feel like you've chosen something deliberately that is expressing something, but it's also the laziest item to put on.
Love that. And then beauty wise, is there anything for your skin, one thing for your body, and one thing for your hair that is central in your routine? Could be a product or could be a routine.
Okay, so skin wise, I very recently learned how to wash my face.
Fair
I'm
enough.
explain that. I read Caroline Hirons' book about skincare, which is amazing. Or if anyone's followed her on social, it's basically all the same advice that she shares on YouTube, but put in a book. I read the book and I was like, oh, so that's how you wash your face. She explains what's really going on when you wash your face and why you should double cleanse, what moisturizer is and why it matters. It blew my mind. I'm almost 35 and now I know how to wash my face. I've now got very into doing the basics and doing them right. So that's been revelatory. For hair, my one life tip is if you have dry or frizzy hair, use a mask instead of conditioner every time. Life
Yeah.
changer. I use like sheer moisture hair masks, which used to only be available in like specialist Afro Caribbean hair places, but now is like super widely available, like pretty much everywhere. And it's just like really rich and lovely and means that before, in the olden days, I would just have this like halo of frizz around me at all times, and now I don't. So that has also been a mood lift. I didn't think I was like mood sensitive to stuff about my appearance, but then I was like, oh no, wow, I really was. I noticed the contrast. And I don't really have one for body, but maybe I can say another hair one, which is that again, like in my mid 30s, I finally learned about brushing my hair. And I learned that not everybody can brush their hair when it's dry. So I've recently discovered that I can brush it when it's wet, but if I brush it when it's dry, it just goes like triangular and vast. So that's not for me. And it's been a game changer.
Love that. I'm also like fully on board with that one, kind of skipping the conditioner and just using a mask. Because I'm like, why am I doing two things? I'm very much about like, is this moving the needle for me? Like, are we creating extra work here? If I can detangle with the mask, let's do that. Let's move into more like the techie world. You mentioned something earlier. It's like the llama apps. Llama.
Yeah.
Like, are there any other tools or apps that you use that are just life changing?
Yeah, so Llama Life is gorgeous. It's a productivity software designed for ADHDers, but anyone can use it. And it's just this really like colorful, gorgeous, like cute like user experience because you can pick emojis. I have animal emojis which are just so adorable, but you could have whatever appeals to you. You can put in tasks and it has this visual timer. So you estimate how long something's going to take, you start the timer, and it gives you this active reminder that time is passing. So I'm one of those people who will be like, oh, I've got 15 minutes before my next meeting. So I'm just going to bake a cake, wash my hair, and walk the dog. And then if I actually put that into Llama Life, it's like, no, that will take 4 hours. You don't have time for that. That visual ticking clock is very helpful. And it does lovely rewards when you tick off a task, kind of like emoji sparkles. So it just really taps into all the things that my brain likes. Big recommend for that. I also love Brain FM, which is software for peak brain performance. It has a bunch of different tracks that are always slightly different, but you choose if you want to do deep work or creative work, de-stressing, whatever it might be, and it offers you suggested combinations of sound, which make really nice, really stimulating or relaxing background sounds. And my final tech tool, maybe it's not a tech tool, it's just an object, but noise cancelling headphones. They have changed my life, and I don't know how I would exist without them. I couldn't go back to the pre-noise cancelling life.
Oh, I love that. So cool. I'm quite interested about this Brain FM one, actually. And to throw in another thing to help that's really helped me with time blindness, that is a physical thing that I will swear by forever, is I have a Casio. If the camera will see it, but it's an old school Casio, like not an Apple Watch or anything. But whenever I'm like feeling stress or like reluctancy to do something, like I don't know, like washing the dishes, I hit the timer on the side of my Casio. If I hit it twice, it's like 3 minutes. If I hit it 4 times, I know that that's 10 minutes. So I tell my brain, I'm like, I can do anything for 10 minutes. So I stick the timer on because it's like a physical thing and it beeps. It really helps me to like it's almost like I tricked my brain. It's like a productivity response now every time I hit, which is quite
Yes.
cool.
Like a mini moment of urgency. You're like, okay, now we go. Like it's happening.
Literally, I'm just like, okay, 10 minutes I can do this.
I love that.
Awesome. And then are there any like business resources that really help you, like newsletters, books, podcasts?
Mm, I think there's a lot of like industry related stuff that I'll read for like certain types of clients. So when I'm doing work with
Mm.
like advertising and PR agencies who do quite often want to bring in like an inclusive and accessible comms person because their campaigns have massive reach and there's so much risk if they get that wrong. So in terms of those clients, I'll read stuff like Ad Age and like Campaign and PR Week. I do really like reading about how people have built their businesses. So kind of any newsletter where people go behind the scenes on like how they built it is always interesting to me. And I really like the work of, I don't know how to say her name. I'm going to say it as Caitlin Bourgoin, but I might be saying that wrong. We can link her in the notes, I'm sure. She does really helpful kind of thinking out loud and building out loud about how to use psychology to sell your products in a way that's like ethical, of course, not like exploitative, but just really helping you understand like how do people understand opportunity? How do they think about a price and how can you present a price and show the value that goes behind it? So yeah, I get lot out of her work.
Hey, you'll definitely do a search and find her work after this. So cool. And then is there anything that you're consuming for fun at the moment that just puts your brain to rest?
I feel so uncool saying this. My mission is always to be vulnerable and honest and real. It's also funny because I'm like, I've discovered washing my face and I've also discovered the library. So here it is, going to my local library. I found it so fun. It's really blown my mind the incredible variety of stuff you can get there. And I've just been really diving into like reading all the kind of fiction that I used to not allow myself to read because I thought, oh, it's I don't know, almost like it's only fiction, so it's not advancing my business. I had a few years where I was making myself read all the time, like books about founders' stories or founders' biographies, and they were so dull to me. I can't even remember the titles. I just had this idea that that's like what a business owner should do. And I've just let myself get back to all my favorite kinds of fiction and just reading like people like Toni Morrison, who I adore, and like Margaret Atwood, and just, yeah, just like having fun, just reading for pleasure. That's
Oh,
shouldn't be drastic, but honestly, like in this very hustle culture world where you sort of feel like everything you do should have productivity value, it has been quite revelatory for me.
so now we're going to transition on to London. Is where are you based for the list? Well, actually, you tell the story about where you're based. Right.
I'm in Hackney Wick and I'm going to go real deep on local things and where I live my life because I will soon be moving. And so I can give away all my local trade secrets.
Incredible. And so let's go with food spots. Where are your go-tos?
Okay, I actually have, so I already have a massive list in Notion, which you
Food.
might appreciate, of all my favorite spots. And I genuinely have 100 here. So I'll pick out, okay, overall, London, I think if you haven't had the honey toast from Arome, you're missing out on life. If you haven't been to Miel in Warren Street, just one of the greatest bakeries, get there now. I would say the Dusty Knuckle Bakery in Dalston is just consistently somewhere that fills my heart with joy. I have a whole section for my favorite places for a matcha, which feels very 2014. My favorite place overall in London would be Katsute 100, which is a Japanese like tea house. There's a branch in Angel, one on Brick Lane. It is so delightful, so charming, and it has all the different types of Japanese teas, your genmaicha, your hajicha, and so on. I'm really bakery obsessed, so there's just a ton more bakeries here, like Forno in Bethnal Green has a really like iconic cherry ricotta bun that I dream about sometimes. Cocktail bars, Satan's Whiskers, Coupette, bunch of other places. I had to put down Shak Fuyu on my list, which is a restaurant in Soho, a Japanese place that I think had a real moment, like maybe 10 years ago or more, where it was like briefly famous, but I'm still obsessed because they do this incredible yuzu margarita and they do French toast with a matcha soft serve. So you will absolutely find me there. Cannot be removed.
Mm, really? Well, that sounds delicious. Incredible. And then are there any like cafe slash co-working spots that you go to or are signed up for?
Yeah, so near me, there's a cafe in Hackney Wick called Two More Years, which I love because it's got loads of natural light. It's got these like massive double height windows. It's next to the canal and it's got really big bench style tables. And during the day, I was about to say loads of other co-workers. There's actually not even that many people. But again, I feel like I can share this. Feels like a secret tip. It's just very spacious, and I'm really sensitive to the space around me. So if I feel like I'm in a spacious room, I feel like I can have bigger ideas and feel more relaxed and think for myself. And as soon as I'm somewhere that's crowded or even the tiniest bit too loud, I feel it kind of like cramping my thinking and making me a bit more like reactive and like narrow and stress and threat based. So yeah, as a sensitive soul, I really love Two More Years. And I would say if people are looking for workspaces and like free and affordable places for co-working, there's a really great organization called Othership, which has like a Slack community and a workspace finder tool. And they've got spaces all over London that you can check out.
Ah, yes, I've heard like incredible things about Othership as well, actually. So you've just nudged me to actually copy LinkedIn. Amazing. And then what does going out or spending time with your friends in London look like for you?
It's mainly restaurants. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's bakeries. I've started doing like croissant crawls with my friends on the weekend, which has been really game changing. You'll go and like try and hit multiple bakeries. Again, if that's not giving like woman in her mid 30s, I don't know what is. I'm like less and less going out. The other
Yeah.
thing that has been really lovely is like, because a lot of my friends are having kids and their availability has really changed. They're kind of like evenings are just kind of like out for a lot of them. I'll meet up with them during the day. And for a lot of my mum friends, they're like, I've got 1 hour free this week and I want to make it count. So they'll want to be like, right, let's go to a gym class and we'll talk while we work out. And I'm like, okay, I'll come and I'll walk you from your house. We'll go. And it's like, it's allowing me to get these like really brief moments of catch up with people whose lives have generally just become really busy and like not so available. So a shout out for the most amazing gym in Hackney Wick called Strong and Bendy. It's woman owned, it's super inclusive, it's really like neuro inclusive and disability accessible. They're really into like body neutrality. So there's no chat about like earn that cheat meal or like whatever. It's all just about like joyful movement, and they have really fun classes. There's like a pop music, Pilates combo class, battle ropes, kettlebells. They have free yoga on a Sunday afternoon, and it's just such a joyful place to be in. So big recommend.
Right. I think I've walked past that actually in Hackney Wick. So yeah, okay. Amazing. And then are you much of like a physical networking event person?
I literally never go to a physical networking event. And I think this might be my sign that I need to, because on the very, very rare occasions in the last few years, every time I've got a really amazing lead for work, or I've met someone who has been transformative. So, like, the evidence doesn't lie. These in person networking experiences are so valuable, but I really resist them. And I tell myself, like, well, maybe my networking is being on social media and like pushing out as much content as I do. And the fact that I try and work in the open and ask for help and offer help. I do try and do a lot of thoughtful connecting up of people. And I think you can substitute for some of that networking effect by being that sort of type of networking through your social media community. But nah, I need to go find some events. But that means that I'm looking for recommendations. So if anyone has any tips, I would love to know.
Fair enough. In the Coffee and Oysters guide, I listed a bunch of recommendations from guests in previous episodes. I'll be sure to send that to you
Okay,
afterwards.
that's my homework. I'll check.
And honestly, I think that's fine. Like I always say, if you want to be a business owner, you either need to be viciously online or viciously offline. But what you can't do is do neither. And it sounds like you've chosen to be viciously like on, and that's
Yeah.
fine. You know,
Yeah, I'm really relating to that viciously online. Yep, that's it. That's how it feels.
like literally, like you don't like pick a struggle. Like amazing. And is there anything on your London bucket list before we wrap up?
Yes, I am London born and bred, and I have never been to the Tower of London, which just feels really strange because I've been past it a billion times, and that's so often the way, right? You just stroll past somewhere. But I recently found out that if you live in Tower Hamlets, you can go for £1. So you can just take your library card or proof of address. This is my sign. I need to finally go and see what all the fuss is about.
And so in this last section, we're gonna chat a bit more. We're just gonna wrap up more or less. But I would need to reflect on a time, on a recent win that you've had and what it meant to you.
But I think a win for me is like every time I got through a whole week without waking up at silly o'clock to finish something off before a deadline or pushing myself in the evenings. But in case that's cheating, I will also give a win in terms of launching some stuff. So I've launched Bold Type, which is my group program on inclusive language and accessibility. And I'm launching an ADHD friendly communication course. And that
Ooh,
is so exciting to me because it feels so badly needed. But also, I think because it encapsulates that thing about working with my strengths, that's just the style of teaching and creating group spaces that feel really intimate and safe and supportive, but also where we can challenge each other. That feels I'm just leaning more and more into my strengths and skills and doing less and less of what doesn't serve me. So it's a win on both counts.
congratulations. And then we like to share the love on this show. Are there any recent wins of anyone else that you would like to celebrate? Maybe through your vicious online networking that you've seen.
Yeah, so through being viciously online, I have made some amazing friends, like people who I now count like real life friends. And one of them is Hannah Litt, and I want to shout her out because Hannah is, and I've got her bio here, she is an award winning social justice activist, a seasoned leader in equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti racism, and a top influential Muslim in Europe for 2 consecutive years. And Hannah is just so incredible. It's her surname is Litt, Litt, and I just really want people to check out her work if they don't know it already, because she offers like coaching, consultancy, keynotes, talks, all about equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism. And she's just launched her own business, and it is going to be so incredible. And I'm just like truly, truly excited to see what happens. What's going to happen there? So check her out.
So cool. Yeah, I'll put her link in the show notes as well. Thank you for sharing with us. And then last question, because I always like to say, you never know who's listening. Is there anything that you need help with?
I need to go to something in real life, actually like connect with people in a room. So I would love, yeah, thoughts from people who are in equity, inclusion, accessibility, or also actually having said that, maybe people that are in like HR, because a lot of people that hire me in for workshops are like heads of HR or heads of people or comms or content. Like if you have a networking space or a community that I could come along to and meet some people, let me know.
Okay, amazing. Listeners, you know what to do. And then lastly, where can people find you? So they
Um,
can tell you about all these amazing networking events or just tell you how amazing you are.
so I'm Ettie Bailey-King. Ettie is Ettie, and I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, I'm on Substack. It's fightingtalk.substack.com. Actually, I'm going to do a plug for my newsletter. So sign up for my newsletter if you want to get free inclusive language and accessibility guidance. Is free for the first week. Basically every week you get an email, and then it's like available for you to access for 1 week, but then after that it goes behind a paywall, so you have to kind of like grab it while it's fresh. And it's full of practical tips on stuff from like pronouns, getting people's names right, how to talk about disability, how to be more LGBTQIA plus inclusive, all of that kind of good stuff. Yeah, so find me at fightingtalk.substack.com or on LinkedIn or on Instagram.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your gems with us. I'm excited for this to go out, to be honest. Right, for everyone, we will see you in a couple of weeks, and please do go check out all of Ettie's incredible work.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Francis. This has been great.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Coffee and Oysters. All of the recommendations will be in the Coffee and Oysters guide as usual. To never miss an episode, make sure you're signed up to the Substack. Support us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to get in touch directly, you can find us at coffeeandoysters@gmail.com /@coffee. All the details in the show notes. Thanks for listening. See you next time.